Hello and welcome to this very special session by the School of Modern Media at UPS. I'm Nalin Mehta. I'm the Dean of the School of Modern Media, and what we are talking about today is something very close to my heart. It is about how technology is changing the newsroom, how it's completely changing the media business, and how it's disrupting industries, and what that means for people who are starting off in the media sector or those who are mid-career professionals, because it requires a complete reskilling, retooling to operate in this new world. The media once upon a time used to be about television, print, radio, the old world. Now it's about this, it's about the mobile phone. Everything is on the phone, which means people produce, which means people consume content on the phone, on the phones. India is having a data revolution, and it's also produced using mobile phones. And that means a totally different kind of media professional of the kind, and which requires a completely different kind of training. We have a very interesting panel today to talk about this. Karnika Kohli, growth manager at Scrollstack, has previously been audience editor at The Wire, and also at Scroll, has before that been social media manager at the Times of India, the youngest social media manager at the Times of India, I might add, even though she's smiling at that. Anubha Bhosle was to join us, but we are living in extraordinary times with fallen very sick. So we hope she gets well soon. In her stead, Sanjeev Singh has very kindly agreed to join us at the last moment. Sanjeev Singh is editor digital broadcasting for the Times Group, where he oversees audio and video for the Times of India, for Navbharat Times, and for 8 other language publications of the Times Group. So Sanjeev, thank you so much for joining in, especially at such short notice for this for what we hope will be an interesting discussion. Also with us are 2 of our students at the School of Modern Media, Nancy Bora and Ritika. Welcome to both of you first. Nancy, by the way, for those who are joining us, I must, before we get on with the actual panel discussion, I have to say that Nancy and Ritika, we're very happy that you joined us. And Nancy, for those who don't know, with a group of other students, where they just scored an interview with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. Nancy, congratulations to you for that. And we will talk to you more about that and to Ritika as we go forward. But first, let's focus on the subject at hand. Karnika, we are setting up a digital first school precisely because of the kind of disruptions that we are seeing. Tell me from where you sit, because you work for a large media house, the Times of India, where you ran social. You work with the digital native organizations across the board, where you've also set up funding and monetization strategies for them. What is technology in the media sector right now from where you sit?
Like you mentioned, it's the internet, right? Like now everything is, most people are consuming, most of your readers, viewers are consuming your work on their mobile phones and on their laptops and basically on the go. And not most, but a lot of reporters are also, especially the ones who are out there, are producing and covering news and publishing using their mobile phone. So what that has, what that has changed is, one, you're getting everything much quicker. Like you don't have to now wait for like newspaper deadlines or like middle morning for the paper to come out. And like one of the things I mostly tell people is that when I open the newspaper in the morning, apart from the editorial sections, there's rarely anything that you haven't read before the day before. So the newspaper now has become really outdated, which is sad, but that is the truth, right? Because you get all the news that you need throughout the day with websites and social media and all of that. So yeah, so that is how I think that is one of the biggest changes that has come in the media industry in the last in India, I would say like a decade and a half, but outside like a much longer time period.
Let me pick up on what you said, and before I get in, Sanjeev, in the discussion, you mentioned newspapers. So, most of us read newspapers by force of habit. Like a Tata Sky connection or an Airtel connection in a house. But look around you. Among people that I know, most people have either disconnected their Tata Skies or Airtels, or have just not watched it for a very long time. Newspapers, many people still keep getting, but many people have stopped getting it during vacations, and now they don't feel the need to bring it back. So, if we were a betting person, then maybe in about 5 years' time, India is actually the only outlier in the global among liberal democracies where newspapers are still growing just in this country. Television is entirely moving to OTT and the digital space. So just to put some facts and figures on this, the COVID year has been a special disruption. But even aside that, last year's numbers were that newspapers declined by 8%, so minus 8%. Television grew by 9%, which is very low for television. And that's growth is only because television has moved to the OTT platforms, which is Hotstar, Voot, platforms like that. Most people now watch IPL on Hotstar. They don't watch it on Star, right? So digital and OTT has grown by 26%. Now, there is no... So what that means is that all the investment that is now happening in the media industry and all the jobs that are being created are happening in these spaces. The other spaces are basically shrinking and they're all converging into digital. So for example, in big media houses, the hirings which are now happening in the newspapers or in the television channels are happening on the digital end of these brands, including for replacement hiring. Sanjeev, is that pretty much a fair assessment?
Yes, and in fact, we're also with the Times Group, you would know that what the pandemic did to our organization, and not just the Times of India, but generally across all media platforms, is that the focus shifted from the hirings also from a generic point of view to a fixed digital point of view, and we've seen that accelerate because of the current pandemic, and most of the hirings taking place now are happening in the digital because most companies have realized that they need to start planning 5 years ahead. Where do they see themselves from now? So what you were saying makes a lot of sense, because that's the general direction in which all media companies are headed.
So Sanjeev, if I can add to that, so you see the fact that everybody has to go digital, that everybody knew. What's happened is that media companies were all preparing for the digital shift, but everybody thought they had another 3 to 5 years to make the complete transition. What COVID has done and the disruption since the lockdown of March that has done is that what would have happened over 3 to 5 years has got compressed into 3 or 4 months. So the kind of investments that were happening and the kind of drastic shift that happened in the industry. So every industry had to go online, right? Schools have gone online, universities have gone online. It's not just the media industry. There's been a disruption across all sectors. But in the media sector, it's been very fast, and it's not going to change. Schools and universities can still change, even though there's a question mark on that over the next. The media is not going to go back for a very simple reason, that this was always going to happen. It's happened in every other country in the world, every other comparable country in the world. India was an outlier. And now, and most importantly, India is having a data revolution. The data consumption per person data consumption in India today is about 12 GB a month, which is more than the average data consumption in North America and in Europe. So it's not reversible. It's not like once COVID goes away, once lockdowns go away, people will go. And when your audience shifts, think about children in your houses. Think about teenagers. What are they watching? What are they consuming? And if they're largely consuming on the phone, then that's what the future is. And that's what media companies are now shifting to entirely. So Karnika, I want to bring you back on this question that, okay, the shift is happening. We know that. When you hire people, what are the kind of skill sets that you are looking for right now? What are the skills most in demand today as a result of this shift?
So, I mean, the basic thing remains, right? You need to have good news sense, right? News, and especially with and I wouldn't say that now there's a lot more news, but now we have access and we get news a lot quicker, even from agencies and other sources. For example, we get a lot of small stories happening in different areas a lot quicker from local journalists and reporters on Twitter than from agencies or even government sources, right? So someone who knows that, okay, someone who can spot that, okay, this will turn into something big, and someone who has that sense. Second most important thing is that they need to understand social media, right? They need to understand how it functions. And that doesn't mean having their own accounts. because you posting as a person or even an influencer is a lot different than you posting as a publisher, right? So you need to have a little bit of technical knowledge on how these algorithms work. Like even if you're just a consumer right now, and especially on Instagram, you would see the influencers keep cribbing about it, how the Instagram algorithm keeps like making their life miserable and their engagement dips down every few months, and all of that happens, and what you can do to tackle it. And like obviously we can't like completely change how these algorithms work, but we can always find like some sort of jugaad or something around it. So yeah, definitely that. Third, like you should be able to do your whole job from your mobile phone. So I don't work from an office even before the pandemic hit, and I used to work from all different parks and all of that, and that was only possible because everything I require to do my job, I can do it from my mobile phone. So you need to be comfortable with that. You need to be quick in understanding what's happening, and you need to be like sort of, you need to be into this, right? Like you need to really be a digital native. Like you would know that, okay, if you're out there, out there and you see something is happening, you know how to use video editing apps. So you can like record a video quickly, edit the video quickly and send it up. Like for example, like, I mean, this is one of the happy things, like is I was crossing through CP a year ago or something, and there was Pride happening, and I realized none of our reporters are at the Pride parade. So I just stopped for the photos and just sent the whole thing, and within like 15 minutes it was on our website, right? So you need to know that. So you need to like mobile phone, just it needs to be an extension of your body, basically.
So I want to just pick up from that point you make with the mobile phone. So I mean, just to take a step back and for some perspective on this, Sanjeev Karnika, if you look at the job searches and the job openings in the last 2 years across the media sector in India, and I'm talking about data from LinkedIn as well as from company postings, and talking with media leaders who hire. I was hiring a lot of people till 2 months ago for different media groups. So there are 4 or 5 kind of skill sets, 2 of which Karnika mentioned, which are highly in demand, right? Now, first, like Karnika said, first and foremost, of course, you have to be damn good at your domain knowledge. Whether you're a journalist or a communicator or a PR person or a communications person, you really have to know what are given. But over and above that, that used to be enough 5 years ago. Now, over and above that, you need, there are 5 skill sets which are in demand. Either you need to know all of them, or one of them, or 2 or 3 of them. One is social media. Absolutely. And social media is very different how it operates on Twitter, and very different how it operates on Instagram, and very different on Who and on Facebook and on other platforms. 1. 2 is search engine optimization. The reason for that is that earlier, when we were younger journalists, all we had to do was broadcast a story, it broadcast, people watch it on the television in their homes or home. Today, nobody's watching it on the TV set, or very few people are relatively watching on the TV set or on the newspaper. So you have to write it for digital. You have to tweet it, you have to Facebook it, you have to make a Facebook video on it, you have to make a podcast on it, you have to have a live interaction on it. So all of those things you need to know, and you can't say I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. You have to know that 360-degree skill set. And why I say search engine optimization, I say that because earlier your distribution was not your problem. Now distributing your content, it has to be found by the reader, and that is mostly found through Google search. Most media houses today have 60 to 70% of the readership in India coming from Google largely. So if it doesn't come up in that search, you might as well not have written anything. It's not going to come up. So therefore, when Karnika mentioned algorithms, Google and Facebook, they keep changing the algorithm. So you have to track it very closely. And they change the algorithm, and the whole industry goes for a toss for 6 months. So learning what is search engine optimization is not rocket science, but digital marketing skills, and most importantly, big data and analytics. Those are, I think, very important skills. Using data, using AI, using machine learning tools, they are changing the way journalism is done. A lot of what we are seeing in the COVID coverage is being driven by big data. And that's just at a very basic level right now. We've built over the last 4 or 5 years several kinds of tools to using data for visual storytelling, and the kind of insights you can get from that. That is a skill set that is of use across industries, not just for media, but for corporations, for think tanks, for public policy See, did you want? What was your sense on what do you look for when you hire currently?
Just to add to what Karnika was saying, that's exactly the skill set we need in the industry right now, where you can just tell any person in your team that, okay, this event is happening next to where you live or where you are currently. Just go and give us a 2-minute video. So we expect the person to know the basics of Mojo mobile journalism. You talk to a few people, get some sound bites, use a mobile phone app, do the basic edit, put some little bit of text to give context to the story, and give us a plug and play product. So that is an ideal worker that you need in the newsroom today. So, but what we do face is that finding this kind of talent is a little tough. You'll find people who are good in, let's say, 2 skills out of 5, but they may not even know the so as a manager, you are unable to extract the best out of them. So what you currently need is somebody who knows all the 5 skills, may not be very good at all, but if he's good at 2 and knows the remaining 3, then your job is done. So that's the kind of skill set the industry is looking for. But unfortunately right now there is, for whatever reason, there is that gap which we feel that should be filled, so that even as managers you can extract the best from the people you have.
That's a good point, Sanjeev. And the other thing is that when you are consuming on the phone and when that changes the form of what you're producing. So I am writing something on, if I'm covering the coronavirus today and I'm writing this something really a really important story on what's happening around me. When I was taught to be a journalist, Sanjeev, you and I were taught together 20 years ago. We were taught how to construct for a broadcaster, and you had digital broadcasting at times too. We were taught that a broadcast story, it was traditional. There was an introduction, there was a structure, there was a narrative, and there was a conclusion, there was drama in the middle. The thing is that now that worked very well for analog television. That now what it is, if most people are seeing a video on Facebook, the data tells us that in 3 seconds, most people stop watching a video after 3 seconds. They zoom out of it. So you have 3 seconds on average to catch a viewer's attention, because there is so much of information in people's news feeds on Google, on Facebook, whatever, that how do you grab somebody's attention without dumbing down to see your thing? Now, if I have 3 seconds to get somebody's attention, I can't give too much introduction. I have to change the way I write that story completely. I start with my main point first, and that's why you need to know this. You can't do this as an afterthought. It's not the same as okay, I know TV, I know radio. All I have to do is just change the platform, shift it over there. No, you have to rewrite it completely. The content may be the same, but the way you reorganize it is very different for every every platform, and it's different for Instagram, for example. What will work on Facebook may not work on Instagram.
Yeah, I think we've all learned that the hard way,
Yeah, Karnika, I want to ask you a question here, which is that we were talking about this the other day. When you hire, what is the biggest problem you face with people you hire, with media schools, journalism schools, people, places where you hire fresh talent from? What's the big issue that you see there?
Before I answer this, I want to just add to what you said about how news has to be, or how your content has to be different on different platforms. So this is where a little bit of knowledge of data, especially websites use a lot of different videos tools. We use Google Analytics. We use there's just too many, right? So for example, I'll give you one very small thing, right? There's this sort of consensus that on the internet people want bite-sized news. So that is not true, right? There's an audience for everything. So, but what that has told us that, okay, there is an audience for long form. There is an audience for that bite-sized thing. In short, one of the most successful. But so how, other websites can take that is by, for example, if you're writing a story, put out the highlights on top. So you cater to both kind of audiences, right? That understanding you'll only have if you understand one, your audience and how much time they're spending and like where they're consuming your content, right? Anyone who's gonna read the story, who wants the detail, will read it regardless, right? But that way you don't have to lose the audience which doesn't want to spend 10 minutes reading your story. So all of that will come from if you have some basic.
May I interrupt you for a second and say, before you come back to the main question I had asked, which is that because you said something which has prompted me to say that, we as editors, what digital has done, and this goes back to another key skill set about listening to our audiences. As editors, with too long, we always made punts on what we think our audience wants. It was always an informed guess. What's happened in the last, because what your audience actually wants, or if audiences actually want, is from anecdotally, from talking to people, but you never had a sense of the full audience. What digital has done is that as an editor, I can track in real time how people are reacting to my story or any story in real time, second to second. Television channels have the same thing with ratings, but that's a survey which comes once a week. Newspapers have a survey which comes once in a year, and it's hotly debated by everybody. On digital, I can track, I've got millions of readers, I can track each of them on every story. So, firstly, it makes you much more, immediately within 10 seconds that you made a mistake, everybody starts abusing you first. As an editor in the other platform, you wouldn't really know that far. You might know it tomorrow. That's one. Two is it makes you question your assumptions a lot more, because you have to understand, track how the audience is reacting, and it makes you question your own assumptions, and it improves you, because then you say, okay, I thought this will work, but actually this is working. And then there's always that fine balance between what the audience wants and what you think you should give to the audience. And it's not a science between that, but you have to track your audience. Any product manager, I use the word project manager very advisedly. Product manager, if you're running a product, a newsroom manager, an editorial manager, if you're running a newsroom, or any marketer, when you launch a campaign, or when you launch a news story, or when you launch a product, you really have to track your audience and shift immediately basis of what the audience is telling you. Then you know what's working and what's not working. The best ideas fail when, it's like there's a famous quote, that I forget by which general, which said that all battle plans look good until you actually go to war. So, and that's what the audience tells you. So, Karnika, you were answering that question on media schools.
I think the best way to put it is that most of the people who are teaching in media schools, and that is those are the people who are supposed to sort of give you a glimpse into what the newsroom is going to be like, haven't stepped into newsrooms in like 10 years. So journalism schools have people who have not.
But you're right, most media schools are like that.
But you do have, you have every now and then you'll have sessions by people who are teaching somewhere, something, and that's not enough, right? Like talking to you for 3 hours in 6 months is not enough, right? You have no sense of what a newsroom is like. So what happens is that you're there, and that is the same which happened to me also, right? Like when you're there, you think, okay, you've got it, and this is so easy. Like I'll step out, and the next stop is BBC, right? But then the moment you step out is you realize, one, no one will let you in the BBC building. Two, difficult because you basically know nothing, right? Especially in a digital environment. Okay, for digital, you know nothing. For print and for TV, there's just not enough jobs, because again, the market is so bad, the economy is so bad. So basically, you're just like,
and most media schools don't teach digital. In fact, virtually hardly any media school in India teaches digital. And that's where the jobs are.
Mind blowing. They just don't. It's amazing.
No, so that's one reason. So by the way, I can say here now that Karnika will be teaching at UPES while doing her while continuing with her work at Scrollstack. And that's the approach that we have taken to solve exactly the issue that Karnika is saying. See, what's happening with the newsrooms and media technology is that newsrooms don't just change every year, they change every 2 months. The shift is happening so fast. So if you're not abreast, if you're not in touch with it, you're not going to be abreast with what's happening. And then so our approach is one, digital first and digital everything. B, to be taught by the best in the industry with the most cutting edge skills in the industry, because we're a school of media practice. And the best way we think to get the best talent to teach is that they continue doing what they're doing in their professional work and teach. But this is not teaching that doing one guest lecture here or there. This is like teaching full on in a long-term engagement with students, because that's the key. That's what it's all about. It's not about anybody can get 10 people to give a 1 hour lecture. That's not what this is about. So Karnika, I'm very happy to announce, will be teaching social media, how to build a digital brand, search engine optimization, and many other things.
Yes.
Correct, Karnika? Is that
part of
what we had discussed?
Yes.
Yeah, part of and more things. Your comments on what Karnika was saying?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I don't know how many years ago when I went to IMC, the journalism school at that time. I believe even now, most like 80% of the curriculum is still the same as what I was taught. So there is a point that current, media schools, they tend to focus a lot on theory and, just generally giving you the background of the thing, which is fine. But ultimately, when you go into the market, as Karnika described, how she had to face so much of struggle in the beginning, because unless they are market ready, what are you doing? I mean, the student at the end of the day may feel cheated because they've spent so much money, they've so much expectation that once they go out, these big organizations will be waiting to hire them. So I think that's a gap that needs to be filled. A lot of, I think, organizations are working in that direction, but really, if you see that the number of people doing it is a little less, so that trend has to change. I mean, we need that trend line to start moving up in that direction to be able to fill that gap.
Yeah. So Sanjeev, that's absolutely true. And I just want to say that, I did mention about Karnika. Anuba, who's not here, Anuba is also going to be teaching. We hope she gets well soon. We have a whole bunch of people among the Chanpreet, who heads Voot, is going to be teaching on, she's just taken over as the head of Voot this month. She's going to be teaching stuff on OTT platform, then digital. Boria Majumdar, who's pretty much the best sports journalist in the country, sports historian. He's going to be teaching stuff. Veera Raghav, former resident editor of The Hindu. A whole bunch of other people. Jaya Bhattacharjee Rose, who I think is the most read blogger in India on the Indian publishing industry, used to run Taylor and Francis South. So this is just a sampling of some names. Let me bring in, before we open this up to questions, let me bring in Ritika and Nancy. Ritika and Nancy, you've been listening to us talk. I won't say that about Karnika, but you've been listening to us two old foggies talk. Maybe Karnika is not an old foggy yet, so what do you make of this? And we've been talking a lot about the kind of digital first approach we have, and what we'll be teaching at and how we are approaching this, which is different from any other media school in the country. So your sense of that, would love to hear what you think. Ritika, Nancy?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that what you guys all are saying, that you're emphasizing on the digitization. UPS is a college where it prepares you, the curriculum is preparing us for the outside world. They are not only preparing us to acquire knowledge, they are preparing us to go for a practical work which is waiting outside for us. And to acquire a job, you need a particular skill set for that. And I think that the skill set that Sir earlier mentioned was search engine optimization. And when we go to interviews, I have heard many people, and they say that they were asking me about this. Do you have a skill in search engine optimization? Do you know how to analyze big data? And I think that people do separate courses for that. But including this skill set in our already existing course is something that I think is a great opportunity for us to explore ourselves and to prepare us for something that is very practical outside. And in the contemporary world, it is important to look at digitization, to look at the digital world. And it's high time that we make digital everything a priority, because as earlier mentioned, that newspaper reading is your habit. my newspaper. And it's not a habit. It's like our phone is our lifeline. We go for news. We rely more on news. Like even if I see a news in newspaper, I'll go in my phone and check, is this true? Is this correct? So I guess the reliability sources are changing, and I think that it's high time that we focus on digitization. And I think our curriculum is all set for that.
Thank you, Nancy. Ritika?
Yes, sir. So I just like to add something, that the fact that the university is providing us such an advance and course is very interesting, and it is really important if you ask us, because in the end we just want, every university promises to make us industry ready, and we see that most universities in the country are not providing what UPS is providing us, and it is something that will make us stand out from the crowd. And this is the only reason why the industry would come and pick us first, and not the other students from other universities, because we already know what we need to do, and we already know that, because digitalization is the need of an hour, because now the market is completely digitalized. And we see that Karnika ma'am is here and Sanjeev sir is also here. They are also a part of digital platforms. So they also know that we know that the whole platform has become very digital, and this is something that we need to do. And if we are doing such a normal course like BGMC and we are not ready, we don't know what is digitalization and what is SOE and how we're going to use big data, and this is something which will not make us industry ready. And I like really like the fact that the UPS is all set to make us someone who is the first choice for the industry. So
Thank you very much, Ritika. So there are a couple of questions. I'm getting a couple of questions in the chat box. I'll take Abhinav's question first. There's a question from Adiba and from Abhinav. Abhinav is asking about campus placements from UPES after these courses and the probability of earning. So Abhinav, what happens at UPES is the university. There is a very strong placement cell. What we do is that for every student who enters UPES, and there are about 13,000 students, it's compulsory for them at the end of year one, irrespective of what they are studying, whether they are studying to be a journalist in the media school, or a communicator, or a lawyer in the law school, or an engineer, or a computer scientist, or a health person in the health sciences school, or studying in the School of Business, they have to do an internship at the end of year one in the social sector. We think that's very important. In year two, they have to do an internship in the public sector, a public policy sector. At the end of year three, they have to do an internship in their actual area of specialization. So if you're in the media school, then you'll do it in the media sector. If you're in engineering, you'll do it with an engineering company. And the job of the placement cell is to help you get that and to get you ready. So for example, can you imagine if there are 13,000 students roughly, so year one would be around 4,000 students, right? Can you imagine 4,000 NGO internships, the large scale of that? Now I have my daddy's company or my uncle's company, wahan pe jaake ek certificate leke aa gaye. It is not that kind of thing. This is certified. The internships that are done through the placements. There's a whole coordination cell that does it. You can get something of your choice, but has to be vetted and certified by those people that this is good enough, by the academic advisor and by the placement cell that does it. And we have signed MOUs with more than 500 NGOs specifically for this, of pretty high stature. The same thing in the public sector. This year for hirings at UPES, more than 400 companies came for hirings. This is a COVID year. Things have been very bad across the economy. Companies coming in on for hiring. Now, as far as the media school is concerned, the media school is new. It is started this year in 2020. Ritika and Nancy are year one students. They're finishing their first year. We'll get our second batch now. But what we are designing is the most cutting edge, most industry ready, not designing, it's been done, course in the country, I think, and I can say that with a fair bit of confidence. In fact, we've consulted, it's been built together with leaders from the industry. In fact, just this morning, we had a board of studies, which has got leaders from across the board. They've helped us design this. So it's not just me and 4 other academics. It's I used to run the Times of India till 2 months back. We've taken help from people like Karnika, Sanjeev, Anuba. Our board of advisors consists of people like Kartika, who runs Amazon's publishing arm in India, Westland. People like Robin Jeffrey, who's pretty much the most well-regarded media academic on India globally. Teaches at Chanpreet, who heads Voot. So with inputs from all of these people, we've designed this curriculum. When we get to placements with our networks and with a very strong institutional system at the university, which already exists, we are very confident of getting good placements. So that's my short answer to you. Adiba has a question I want to ask. How do you correct our media? In India's media is like a fish market. What other people tell the media hears that and bring that. I'm not sure I got the whole question, but this is a motherhood question about how to correct the media. I think everybody's exasperated with the media. I think media operates in echo chambers of the left and of the right. So it really depends on who you speak to. I think ultimately, I won't give a political answer on this. What I will say is that ultimately media is a product. Globally, media, every media company is a kind of public broadcasters. Public broadcasters, except for the BBC and their question mark with the BBC as well, there are no independent public broadcasters globally. Al Jazeera is controlled by the state. BBC is funded by a tax which everybody who buys a TV set in Britain pays, which is also going to be abolished very soon. That's already been announced over the next 3 or 4 years. The whole debates around that. Every other media corporation is a corporation, right? So if anyone tells you that media is not a profit-oriented, what they're saying, or they're lying. Simple. Two. So and therefore, the best defense of good journalism now is the media the fourth estate. Absolutely. Is it important for democracy? Absolutely. But the only defense of good journalism and good media really is if it's a sustainable business. If it's not, they will do the kind of stuff you see on a TV, which is Samsiri programming, just to survive. Yeah. So and there are structural issues in India around various sectors, and if I start talking about that, it will take 2 hours. For that, you have to come to UPS and learn about why media needs to change. Okay. There are questions on how much will you focus on practical, as media is all about practical exposure. Yes, that's a good question. I think Tanvi Karnika spoke about that. Sorry. The answer to that is absolutely. You cannot learn how to be a media professional or a journalist sitting in a classroom. Absolutely, you can't. You can get some understanding of tools, but you're only as good as what you can produce yourself. So our approach is very simple. You will learn it by doing it. Build stuff, build products. We help you to build them. You have the best teaching you, but they're teaching you to give you some basic concepts, but they're enabling you to do stuff yourself. And that's what you're evaluated on. If you go for a job interview after a degree is only a opening gateway to get into the door. But nobody gives you a job because of the degree, especially in the media sector. They give you a job because of what you can produce for them. If you can't produce it, it doesn't matter if you're 95%, you're pretty much useless. So for that, and therefore the only approach is to build stuff, and you can only learn by building, because then that's how you make mistakes, and you can only learn from those mistakes. So wanted to add to that?
I just want to add to that is like, I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, but the way we have, Nalin and I have discussed our course structure. So you'll be from day one, you'll be working on building a brand for yourself. And I'm not saying that in those marketing terms that, oh my God, we'll turn you into a brand, but no, you'll be working your project will start from day one. And everything you learn throughout the module is what you're going to apply. So by the end of it, hopefully you'll have something and you would have learned something and you will have something to show and you can have it in your CV and with that.
Yeah. There is a question on can you get into an OTT platform after doing journalism or graduation in media? Absolutely. See, we are defining digital media. We are a school of modern media. We are not a school of journalism alone or news media alone. We are a school of modern media. For us, let me explain what I mean. Typically, most media schools are journalism schools or news schools. But please understand that everything today which is on digital is media. Amazon is a media company. So is Google. So is Facebook. And so is the traditional media companies. So for us, the digital media skills that we want to impart are applicable across sectors, from corporations to OTT platforms to large FMCG companies to media companies. Media industry, traditional media industry, which is television, radio, print, is a subset of that. And the news industry is right. So that is why the skills that we have, they are cross-cutting. They are skills about how to be a storyteller. Now, once you know how to be a storyteller and how to distribute your, to write stories, produce them on video, audio, multimedia, interactive, you can use that for yourself. You can use that for a media company. You can use that for a communications company. You can use it for FMCG company. Today, very large FMCG companies are setting up their own newsrooms. They are hiring hundreds of journalists to tell their own stories, because they've realized we have to reach our consumers. Why do we have to go through this via media of the media? Why can't we tell our stories ourselves on Twitter and Facebook? It's the same skill set. Only the story is different. So, so yes, one OTT company after this. There's another question: is BBA in media a good option than a regular BBA? Look, that's really a matter of your choice. A BBA degree, what it does, it opens up your options in the business space. Now, if you had an interest in media and wanted to also hedge your options, then it's a good option to try, because then you can still go on to do an MBA thereafter. You can still, do what a regular BBA does, but you have the option of getting into the management space on the media side as well. So it's really a function of your interest. Our BBA program focuses on event management, on PR and strategic communication. So it sets you up for that strategic communications side of things. That's the program that we are offering. It's got two specializations. One is on digital marketing, which is a very fast growing skill, and the other is on strategic communications. Yeah. Oh, there are lots of questions. The question box is popping up. So sorry, I just don't want to keep talking. Do you think there's something to journalism that is more than the medium being used, be it paper, airwaves, or net? If yes, how is the school planning to prepare students for it? Yes, absolutely. Journalism, that's a very good question to ask, because what we are talking about is purely the craft. But the craft is pretty much useless if you don't have a story to tell. The craft is to be a storyteller. And these are techniques of how to craft a story. But if you don't have a story to tell and you don't know anything about the world, then you're useless anyway. Then the craft is of no meaning. And that's what Karnika started off by saying. So you cannot be a journalist if you do not have a deep understanding of society, if you do not have an understanding of politics, of economics, of sociology, of deeper trends, subterranean trends in society. Just knowing how to do a tweet or a Facebook post, or knowing SEO or digital marketing, that's not good. That's not enough. Those are the additional things you need to survive. But the core thing of journalism, the core of understanding, that does not change. So yeah, so that's a very good question, and how we address it. We have some pretty intensive programs on introducing people to Indian politics, to Indian economy, the political economy. Most importantly, we are very interdisciplinary. So students at UPES, they have access to two things that most universities, actually virtually no university in India has access to, which is, one is a school for life, which basically impart about 20 credits across 3 years in a 3-year program, which are compulsory for life skills training. Those are things around critical thinking, around design thinking. Those are life skill courses, right? So those in the humanities, life skills, as well as in the humanities stream. So those, that's one part. The second part, which I think is particularly unique, and in India that doesn't happen very often, is very much like the American universities, and it's definitely part of the national education policy as well. So we're very proud to be implementing it from this year, which every student, whichever discipline they are, will be able to take courses from other disciplines. So if you are a student in the School of Modern Media and you are interested, you have access to a whole bunch of courses from the School of Law, from the School of Business, the School of Computer Science, the School of Engineering, and you can pick and choose. Now it's your choice and there are about 18 credits that add up to it over 3 years. It's your choice that you want to sample a bit of that. You can say, okay, I'll do a bit of law, and I'll do a bit of computer science, and I'll do a bit of engineering, and I'll do a bit of health science. That's one your option. No, look, I'm a media person, but I want to specialize in health. So I'll do 18 credits specifically on health. Or I want to specialize on media law. So I'll do 18 credits in law from the law school. And then you are taught by the lawyers and evaluated by them. So that's an exploratory basket that we call, and every student has access to that. So that gives you a much more deeper interdisciplinary training outside of the field that you're in, and vice versa. So if you're a computer scientist in the computer science school, they can also come and do courses with us at their school if they do all those courses. Similarly, you can get a minor in another discipline along with your core degree. I think the third thing that we do is that we offer specializations. So in your core discipline, we have defined 9 specializations in the media school. So you can choose to have no specialization, that's your choice, and get the basic degree, or you can choose any one of these 9 specializations. And those are along the skill sets that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. So yeah, so that's the, there are lots of questions. Adiba is asking, she wants to know about the course completely. Yes, we can, I think our counselors are available. We are very happy to give you information about the courses. Check out the website, all the information is there. We can get somebody to call you after this. There are counselors who can give you detailed information, and we are always available to have a chat on that. Is it necessary, Rajendra, to stay with the changeable technology which remains unsteady? Yeah, I mean, it keeps changing and it's unsteady. But that's true. However, the direction of change is very clear. What has changed has changed. You can only change further, which is exactly the point that Karnika was making earlier, that things change every 3 months. You have to constantly keep abreast at it. The phone that is relevant today that is completely outdated today was a very high-tech phone 2 years ago. So that once the technology changes, every industry is changing, is getting disrupted. So for example, in many industries, the IT industry is changing completely. India became famous in the IT industry as the back door of the world, as the back office of the world. We were doing low-end skill stuff in Bangalore and in other places. Now all that is being shifted with AI. The IT industry has to shift. So you have to, the higher end jobs, to get the higher end jobs, you have to be more skilled. Of course, India has some very high skilled people in the Silicon Valley and in India, but that's not what was getting the bulk of the jobs was for the lower end of the scale. That's why there's a crisis in the IT industry, for example, or in the engineering industry right now. The same thing is happening in the media. The technology will change, so you have to change. Does it mean that that you have changed today, that's enough? Of course not. You have to constantly keep evolving. But the direction of change is very clear. And in the media industry, the direction of the change is entirely digital. Now, what is digital today may be very different from what is digital tomorrow. Karnika, there's a question for you. I want to work for organizations like Scroll or Quint. Do they hire students from media or from any program?
Both, and most of our newsroom is actually really young, and we also have fellowship programs for reporters. Actually at Scroll, one of our best reporters, Vijeta, she joined after just finishing her education, and she's been with us, I think now 3 or 4 years. So yeah, a lot of young people work in these organizations. So yeah, we would love to have.
Okay. I think I just realized the question I had asked about how is school preparing for people outside. There's something to journalism more than the medium we use. That was Soma. Soma is, by the way, also going to be teaching at the school. So in fact, I'd missed that she had asked the question. Soma, by the way, is teaching a very interesting course on reporting the other India, which is about how do you write about or report on the India that one is not familiar with. When you go to a slum, when you go to a rural area, when you deal with caste, when you deal with biases in societies or in those parts of society that may not be part of your natural habitat. What are the biases you deal with, both conscious and subconscious? How do you understand this? How are you sensitive to it? All of that. So I think that's the kind, we really want to impart that kind of sensitivity. That's very important. You can't be a journalist or a communicator without that. There is a question, why would you do, question for students, why did they choose UPES? Ritika, Nancy, you should answer this.
Actually, when I shifted to Dehradun, I have consulted many people, my relatives who live there, and they all suggested me UPS. And once I got to talk with some counselors at the UPS, they made me believe that UPS is, and actually the best part about what they told me that actually prompted me to take admission in UPS was that and put a lot of emphasis on your personality development as well. So they are not like giving you books to read and they're not giving you the material to read. Even we have a lot of guest lectures. We have industry people guiding us throughout. And we have a curriculum that serves you as and develops your personality. As Sir mentioned, the school of life thing. So, we are like right now in our semester, we are learning leadership and teamwork. And I don't think any other university in India is providing you with that opportunity. So I guess, yeah, that is what prompted me to choose UPA.
Initially, okay, for me, so I would say that initially it was like I reside in Delhi. So I decided to go for journalism. Initially, I wanted to go for fashion designing, but I didn't, I was not able to. So I decided to go for journalism, and I searched through so many different colleges that were offering, and the well-established colleges, well-established universities that were providing such advanced courses on but I thought that let's give it a go and go for University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, and journalism was a very new course there. But after applying there, I did some research and I found out that they are offering a thing called School for Life that Nancy just mentioned. And this is the reason why earlier said mentioned that Nancy was able to contact the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda. And I don't think that any university has ever managed a first year student to go and directly contact a Prime Minister of another country. Is it something that University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, UPS in Dehradun has offered us, that we gained the confidence, we developed ourselves in a way that we were able to contact people on such higher level, and we even got a response from that side. So this is something, and the courses are really advanced, and the way we are learning the courses is not just like we are sitting in front of a laptop and just learning it. We have projects, we are being given a different kinds of assignments, which is not given to any other students in other universities. So this is what stands us out from everybody else. So this is the only reason why I decided to be in UPS.
Thanks, Ritika. There is a question, and I think it's an important question. If COVID continues, how will we get industry or any kind of practical exposure? Because online education doesn't help. So the answer to that is, and we'll just have a couple of minutes, so I'll just answer this. And Sanjeev, there's one last question for you, and then we will close. The answer to this is that, look, the COVID situation is, as a university, has impacted the whole country. So every single university, every single school, and every single company is dealing with the same issue. How did it impact us at the university this year? One, that we are teaching online. We had to move online because we have to follow government guidelines. There are central government guidelines and state government guidelines. We are bound by both. There's a regulatory structure in place in India in the university system. We work with the authorities on that, and we follow their safety protocols. So for this year, for right now, for example, like most of the schools and colleges, based on government directives, we are, and Nancy will know that. I mean, they are part of that. It will only reopen for physical stuff when it's safe enough to do that. And when the government allows us to do that, number one, because the safety of our students is our foremost concern. Now, your question, what does it mean for internships, placements, all that? So this year, we had a lot of placements with the placement cell. We have also asked the same question. The answer to that was that most companies still took people for internships and allowed them to do it online, because those companies are also working online. It's an entirely new world. This would not have been imaginable 1 year ago. But once everything worked through work from home, companies are also doing internship, getting interns as work from home. Because if their own people are not coming in, how can interns go and, we can't create new companies who will be working outside of the safety protocols. So I'm very glad to tell you that a lot of companies, placement rates are similar to last year, surprisingly so, because of this has been an exceptionally bad year for the economy. However, yes, there were many companies, I'll be totally honest. Our understanding is that there were some companies that were not happy about online thing, but then they said, okay, fine, because that makes sense because we ourselves are not working from home. But there were many companies who were very happy about it. They were saying, we have to get our work going. So that ecosystem has worked both for placements, for internships, as well as for placements for jobs for people who have passed out. So yeah, so that's my answer to that question. Sanjeev, there's a last question for you, then we have to close. The question is, media is dying. How do you think they should adapt, or how are they adapting? Because their big printing machines will be of no use. I'm just paraphrasing from the question.
I think that's a question that all the traditional media groups have been grappling with for the past 1 year. And I think a couple of things that that can be mentioned here. One is, of course, the fact that they have to switch to the digital part and focus more on how to increase their footprint on digital platforms. And the second is, obviously, when you switch to the digital platform, then what is the kind of content that you create? What is the form you give to that content? Then again, video and audio becomes very important. It's not just about telling a story in text. The growth rate of video consumption and audio consumption is very well. So they need to somehow turn the pipeline in a way in which they can produce more content for video and audio. And apart from that, there's also the subscription model that eventually most of these organizations will have to move to. So like right now, we're in an age where we are very happy with the kind of average views we get on stories and videos and audio, but eventually it's all going to be about monetization, and how ready is a media organization to create that kind of content for which people will pay, because that's the only way forward. So apart from moving more towards the digital aspect, creating content on audio and video for digital platforms, and third, of course, is moving towards a subscription based model for survival in this industry.
Right. On that note, we will have to close. We are for an hour. So thank you so much, Ritika, Nancy, for joining us. Karnika, Sanjeev, thanks so much for joining us. And I hope it was worth your time, and it was worth for everybody who joined us. Thank you so much for your questions, for listening in, and for asking us questions. Thanks so much. We are doing interesting things at UPS, at the School of Modern Media. It is a digital first school. I think it is pretty much different from every other media school, designed by the best in the industry. It is co-designed with them. It is entirely a hands-on approach. And we think that the idea is to make a meaningful difference to the industry by getting people who are industry ready. That's the whole point. We're a school of media practice. And we take that very, very seriously. So thank you so much. Bye.